The Mariners officially announced their non-roster invitees to spring training, and Joe and I are going to go over the list and some notable players that were left off of this non-roster invite list. I think that we start, Joe, with the pitchers because
Sure.
there's a lot of them,
Mhm.
and I think that there's really not a whole lot to talk about with the pitchers. So, starting with left-handed pitchers that were invited. So, this is guys who are not on the 40-man roster, but are still in the organization, whether that be single A, double A, triple A, what have you. They're just not part of the 40-man roster, so they technically are not guaranteed a spot in spring training. They have to be invited. So that's just what that means. It doesn't mean that they're all of a sudden part of the team. It just means that they have a chance to, I guess, try to win a job.
Show
So
the team their stuff. They're auditioning.
starting with the left-handed pitchers, we have Peyton Alford, who's been with the organization for quite some time now. I want to say he moved up to double A last year, if I remember correctly.
I'll take a look.
Josh Fleming, Brandon Garcia, obviously one of the Mariners' top pitching prospects, a guy that we've talked about a lot moving to the bullpen this year. Austin Kitchen and Drew Pomerantz. A couple of guys in Kitchen and Pomerantz specifically that are a part of the pile. Guys that probably don't have a spot, but could work their way into the bullpen for the Seattle Mariners show. When we're looking at the right-handed pitchers, do you want to break down some of the guys that are on here?
Sure. I'll confirm Peyton Alford was in Double A last year. So the right-handers, we've got Luis F. Castillo. The Mariners doing a full bit, it seems, with bringing him in. It's just...
Do you see they also signed another Julio Rodriguez?
I did see that. Yeah, they're going fully for the memes and just trying to feed into it as much as they possibly can. Tyler Cleveland's there. Hunter Cranton, which is a guy that I think a lot of people are excited that he is going to be part of this non-roster invite just to see what he's got. Logan Evans is here as well. Obviously one of the Mariners' top pitching prospects. Very, very exciting for him. See what he's got. And then the next two pile guys announced, was it today that they announced that they had signed Neftali Feliz, but like he's been a part of like...
That was a while ago.
I know, like there's like... It was like a big, I don't know, I feel like, was it MLB.com or just like MLB's Twitter? Like they posted like a graphic for it. It's like, didn't that happen a while ago?
Yeah.
Neftali Feliz, long time Ranger, has been around baseball for a long time. Shintaro Fujinami is up here next as well. So another guy, 100 miles an hour, added the pile. See what you got from him. Jesse Hahn is here. Soren Lau, I don't know who that is. I've never seen that name before, personally. So I'm not entirely sure. You got Casey Lawrence, another older reliever. He was with the team last year, brought him back, was just in Tacoma for like I think the entirety of last season. Org depth, which is kind of what we're looking at there. Adonis Medina and Darius Valdez. So yeah, there's just a lot of names, a lot of right-handed pitchers, but there's a couple that got left off specifically, which I think is something to kind of take a look at. Because you've got guys that are like in the prospect list, like Hunter Cranton and Logan Evans, but then Ryan Sloan's not here, obviously recently drafted. Sange is not here, recently drafted. So like I'm not overly like concerned necessarily about that, but Michael Morales, I mean, he was co-pitcher of the year in the Mariners organization for the minor leagues. Where he at? Brandon Garcia's here. Where's Michael Morales? Morales is the 13th ranked prospect in the Mariners farm system, according to MLB Pipeline currently. That can change soon. However, Morales seems like a guy that should have been invited to this, and unless they don't see his development nearly as close as a guy like Logan Evans, as far as like starting pitching is concerned, maybe that's why he's left off, because they know what they have with starting pitching, and they want to have more opportunities for relievers like guys that have been added to the pile. But you take a look at Tyler Cleveland as well. I think he's a starter. I'm pretty sure he's a starter. And he's here. So it's just, I don't know. Some of these choices were a little bit confusing, but anything that you've got from this list that really like stands out to you? I think Cleveland's actually a reliever. Now I'm looking at it.
Soren Lau was a guy who was in the Dodgers organization, signed in their international signing period when he was 16. He's now 25. But he transitioned from a hitter, he was like a first baseman or something like that, into a reliever over the past couple of years. And so he started pitching in 2023, and in that time he has in the minor leagues a 3.76 ERA in between single A and triple A, all the way up to triple A.
Mm.
In 110 innings, he's been a reliever. His WHIP at 1.309, a little high. So the thing with the list of guys we're talking about here is there are guys like Saron Lau or like Tyler Cleveland, guys that are just depth guys that have a very, very, very low chance of making the club out of spring training. And then you have guys like Shintaro Fujinami and, potentially like Casey Lawrence or something like that. Those are guys that we could absolutely see making their way onto the team in 2025. Brandon Garcia and Logan Evans, while they're both starters, there's Logan Evans obviously tried to be a reliever last year, and it's Brandon Garcia is the guy who they've talked about making a reliever in 2025. So two guys again that could crack the bullpen for the Mariners coming out of spring training. Let's move on now, Joe, to the infielder outfielder portion. It's just one player, it's Samad Taylor. Happy to see that he did stick with the organization.
Yeah.
After being DFA'd earlier this offseason. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
Catchers. We have Josh Caron, who was obviously drafted by the Mariners. Was it 24 or 23?
That was last year.
It was 24. Josh Caron, power hitting catcher there. Connor Charping, who is a catcher / first baseman / center fielder. We have Harry Ford, of course. We knew that Ford would be there this year. He'll start next year, I would assume, maybe Double A, but probably Triple A.
I think he's earned his way to Tacoma.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's exciting. He's probably not going to make the team unless he hits the cover off the ball in spring training and they somehow find a way to get rid of Mitch Garver. Jacob Nottingham is back with the team. So, round of applause for Jacob Nottingham, back once again after that whole saga a couple years ago. And Nick Raposo, as the last catcher here on this list, also staying in the organization after being DFA'd earlier this winter as well. So, another guy there I'm happy that we kept. But any notable names missing here, Joe? Because I think there's one.
I think the only one would be Blake Hunt, who, I mean, he's guaranteed just to be AAA. I think he's on part of the 40-man roster. So I don't think that one is necessarily like missing. Like I think he's guaranteed a spring training invite no matter what. But Grant Knipp is the one I think maybe you're more so alluding to. Another 2024 draftee catcher / reliever. So a two-way player, big power, throws the ball hard, just power and power on both sides of the ball. I think he's probably more like a raw prospect that you need to kind of mold and cultivate a little bit more before you bring him into these types of scenarios as far as like where he might see playing time. Because again, 5 catchers as non-roster invites when you've got Cal, Garver, and Blake Hunt already in front of them. Like that's 8 catchers. Sure, Garver probably doesn't really factor into that much. And who knows how the Mariners will attack spring training this year if they want more of their regular guys to get more regular reps to make sure that they're not cold going into the regular season, however that may figure. But Nip, I think it's more so a situation where you want to see what you have out of the lower ceiling, higher floor guys right now and let Nip kind of have the run of it in the minor league camp and just get as much reps as he can down there compared to like having him be here and splitting time with Nottingham and Raposo. Like it doesn't really seem, I'm not upset that Nip's not here, but I get why people would be like maybe excited if he was.
Yeah, I think that it makes sense. I mean, like you said, there's so many catchers already on this list. In 2024, I'm looking at the non-roster invitees. The only holdover is Harry Ford. Matt Scheffler's gone, Michael Papirski's gone, and Jake Anchia are gone.
Rip.
So yeah, they had 4 last year, 5 this year, 8 total, like you said. And so I think that when I look at last year's list compared to this year's list, what's interesting to me, there's a lot more younger guys on the pitching side of things than there was last year. Last year it was pretty much all pile guys.
Sure.
Like Jonathan Diaz, Kirby Sneed, etc. God, these are some names. Heath Hembury was there.
Woo.
So that brings us to the outfield, Joe, where last year it was Isaiah Gilliam, Spencer Packard, and Alberto Rodriguez. Now this year it is Lazaro Montes, Spencer Packard, and Rylan Thomas, who the Mariners got in the Ryan Stanek trade earlier in the 2024 season. The only notable name that I see that isn't here is Johnny Farmello, but that is of course because he is rehabbing and he's probably just not ready yet.
Mhm.
and there's no point. Like, they're gonna take it slow with him. They have no reason to rush him. He is the one guy on the list. And I was like, wow, I'm actually kind of shocked that he is not a part of it, but that would be why. So otherwise, the Mariners' outfield depth in the organization isn't really that strong. I think other than Farmelo right now, you have like what Jared
Sun
Soderstrom, however you say his name,
Jared
Sundstrom,
Sundstrom, yeah.
and then Carlos Jimenez, I think.
Yeah, he's down there in high A. I think
Yeah,
like as far if you're speaking more so about like quality depth as opposed to like I mean Cade Marlowe exists. Like
right.
Packard and Thomas I think are close enough to being like the quad A type players that Dom Canzone also fills that role as well. So
Mhm.
like as far as like org depth is concerned, I think it's kind of top heavy with Laz and Johnny Farmelo, and obviously having Farmelo not here because he is rehabbing that ACL injury makes it seem a bit thinner than maybe it actually is.
Mhm.
But I'm not overly worried about like where the org depth is considering you've got Julio. He's 24. Like there are prospects older than him still probably around baseball. Probably not even like I could almost probably I keep saying probably. Holy hell, probably counter on the screen right now. I can guarantee that there are prospects in the top 100 that are still older than Julio or around the same age and he's going into his fourth season, right? I'm not super worried about the org depth there. I'll be excited to see Laz get some like regular playing time, whether it be at DH or if he's out there roaming around right field throwing missiles in. It'll be exciting. Ryland Thomas is a guy that I'm surprised he's younger than I thought. He's not 25 yet. Like he's going to be turning 25 pretty soon. I expected just like with where he was at with the Mets and maybe given his skill set, I don't know if like high contact, low power kind of outfielder made me feel like he was older, but I mean, he's been in the like professional baseball since 2022. Yeah, he's only going to be like going into his age 25 season. Like that could be a pipeline where if he continues to hit for a high average and can put a little bit more together offensively, like given power or maybe working on his walk rate, might not be like a bad fourth outfielder, fifth outfielder as far as like depth is concerned. If he takes over that role from Marlowe or from Dom Canzone, however that kind of shapes out. But yeah, the outfield, you're really looking at Laz Montes and seeing what he can do.
Yeah, just based on the 40-man roster, guys like Dom Canzone, Cade Marlowe, they'll both be there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, behind Randy, Mitch, Luke Raley is an option, Victor Robles, and Julio. So the outfield's a position of where the Mariners really don't have to worry at this time. But position the Mariners do have to worry about, Joe, and it is, I would say it's fitting to see a lot of the guys on here, but the infield with Michael Arroyo,
Mm-hmm.
of course, great year last year. Nick Dunn, who we had to familiarize ourselves with a little bit. Colt Emerson, #1 prospect for the Mariners and top 20 prospect in baseball. Brock Rodden is here as well. Ben Williamson, third baseman, is here. And of course, Cole Young. So we have 6 guys on the infield side of things here. But in my opinion, I'm shocked that there are a few guys missing. When you look at the Mariners' top 10 prospects, obviously Felnin is not there,
Yeah.
which I find interesting. Obviously, he was only in rookie ball, so it's like maybe they just didn't really feel the need to extend him that invite. And then Ty Pete is the other one, who is not a part of the non-roster invites here. So I don't necessarily know what that means, if it means anything. But it is just kind of surprising to not see those 2 guys on there because when you think about non-roster invites, this is a great time for guys like Ty Pete and Fellman and whatnot, the young guys to really get exposure to major league camp. And so, but they it looks like they went with guys that are a little bit closer to the big leagues.
I think 2026 should Felon and Ty Pete still be with the organization, that will be their time to shine because as like the ranks kind of graduate and they get older and they're getting more regular reps, like that will allow them to mature a little bit more and then have more quality reps. Like I would consider this similar to the Grant Nip situation where there's only so many opportunities for them to get reps. And sure, just being around the guys like in or around like the clubhouse or just like being in the camp could have a very like large positive impact, but I'm not overly surprised about either of them necessarily given some of the other names in there. Like I would invite Arroyo before both of them, I think, just given like proximity to the MLB. Like, and you kind of said that at the end there of like what the reasoning is, and I think it's pretty clear why. Like you mentioned Felnin only in rookie ball. Ty Pete, he's still just 19 down in Modesto for the second year, full year now in 2024. He'll probably start the year in Everett would be my guess. But I think looking at it more so, the one thing that seems like it's missing to me, and it's just if we're really talking about lack of org depth, there's no first baseman. You've got Luke Raley and Tyler Locklear, and then maybe Donovan Solano. But obviously all those guys are on the 40-man rosters. Like, you're not going to see them on this list. Like, did Hogan Windish get snubbed? Like, does he deserve another invite? Because I think he was invited last year. But just on Fangraphs roster resource, first base, there's only 4 guys. Locklear, Windish, Hunter Fitzgerald, and then Milkar Perez. Still kicking.
Forgot about that guy.
So, yeah, it's just not that there's a lot of guys to invite, but looking at where the infield kind of stands, it's like, what are we? Every single game is going to be Rayleigh and Locklear and Donovan Solano. Like, there's not going to be a lot of shuffling at first base. Whereas, like, for the infield, like, you've got at second and short, JP, Ryan Bliss, Dylan Moore, Michael Arroyo, Colt Emerson, Cole Young, Brock Rodden plays second base. Like, there's a lot of guys up the middle that need time to see reps, but also, like, you'd want guys like Arroyo and Emerson to get reps in there to develop, and then obviously you want to see what Cole Young can do, because if he starts hitting 350, that really starts to be like, okay, where are we at with him and his development? Are we going to start him down in Tacoma, which I think is the likelier outcome, regardless of how he does in spring training, because spring training games don't actually matter, just in case anyone was wondering. So yeah, I don't know. And also even throwing Samad Taylor into that, he's middle infield. Like, I mean, he's a utility guy to the max. That's why he's listed as infield, outfield. But yeah, the infielders, I don't necessarily disagree with the choices. And I think some of the snubs make sense just because of their age.
Yeah, and in the case of Hogan Windish, he had a really rough year last year.
Yeah.
He had 218, 332, 383 in 124 games in his first exposure to Arkansas.
That was a really high.
Stevens.
That was a pretty high OBP, no?
332
compared to his 218 average.
Yeah. He
That's
walked 65 times. He struck out 167 times.
Bro, okay. So on Fangraphs, it has the percentages. 12.5% walk rate in AA. 32.2%. Oh no!
He did hit 15 homers though. Stole 19 bags. So, but yeah, Windish just had a rough year. I mean, he came off a pretty good year when he was in Everett, where he had 270, 372, 507. But yeah, just a rough year. He'll definitely repeat Arkansas in 2025. I think the list is interesting. I think that when you look at the invites, there are 6 of the top 10 Mariners on the top 30 prospects are here. And then 11 of the top 30 total are here. So obviously, when you look at the top 30 prospects, you're missing guys like Senja and Sloan and Farmello and Celestin, who, again, all 6 of the 7 Mariners in the top 100 prospects in all of baseball are here, except for Feldman. And I don't know, of all the guys, I think Feldman's the one that I would have liked to have seen added to this. I understand why he wasn't. But I don't know. Like, it's spring training. Who cares? Like,
sure.
Joe, I do want to mention a little bit because people probably aren't familiar. Nick Dunn. Can you break him down a little bit? Because you talked about it a little bit before we started doing this. He was signed in October. He was one of the first moves the Mariners made this offseason, signing him to a minor league contract. And he actually might be a little something, Joe.
It's a situation where he's kind of at probably his last stop, potentially, to really have a chance at like a big breakthrough for a major league career. So he's been in the St. Louis Cardinals organization since 2018. He is currently going to be entering his age 28 season. He has not seen a major league game in his 6 years playing professional ball. But he has posted a WRC plus in the minor leagues over 100. There's only been one time he's been below 100 WRC plus in the minor leagues. So like a second baseman / third baseman is where he's listed on Fangraphs roster resource. Mainly, I think a second baseman. He's a left-handed hitter. Last year in AAA, he hit 316, 374 with a 467 slug, a 120 WRC plus in 98 games. I think that that shows that he's a mature player for that obviously grouping. Like he is like the definition of a quad A guy if he's on your major league roster, and if he's in AAA, he's kind of like a super senior. Like he's at his like kind of like wit's end as far as like what happens next. If he plays well in spring training, I think he's got a decent chance. Maybe not like supplanting Austin Shenton, but like definitely throwing his hat into the ring of like, hey, like I can help out somewhere. And maybe the Mariners make a move where they trade someone off like the current existing 26-man roster, and that allows him to step in, or however it works, right? There's a lot of moving parts. Unfortunately for him, I think the depth chart is not in his favor.
Of the guys here, he's the biggest unknown that could also be like kind of an X factor depending on how he performs. But we'll just have to wait and see. There are 13 days until pitchers and catchers report. It is right around the corner now. These are your non-roster invitees. Let us know in the comments down below who you think is going to win the jobs in spring training, and go Mariners.